All right, everyone, welcome back to Centers Part 2. Without further ado, we're going to talk about the motor centers, which are the energy centers. So Nattalee, what does that mean?
So hello everyone, welcome back. As you know, there's 9 energy centers and they each have a function and a purpose. And so there are 4 centers, and you see what's colored in there. They give energy to the body. So if somebody has all 4 of those centers, they have a lot of energy. Now, what they do with that energy is up to them, but that's what that means. It actually is a motor that continues to run 24/7 when it is colored in, or the other term is defined. So let's just do a quick review of the root center, because as you remember in the last video, we said that it's a pressure center. The pressure center at the root and the pressure center at the head, where pressure from externally is coming in. Well, it also is a motor, and you can think of it as like the gas station. It's got fuel, or the rocket ship. It's got a lot of potency when it is colored in, and it's consistent when it's colored in. So this is where we receive the stress. Stress and pressure are kind of a synonymous. This is where the adrenaline is. And we talked about it can have some worry and concern in there, and potential for depression. But the main thing to remember is that when it is defined, it is the adrenals are able to handle more stress. And when it's open or undefined, it's on and off. It doesn't as easily handle the stress. So yeah, let's go on and see what else. Just a little bit of review on the root center. So if your root center is defined, it has consistent and an internal way of processing pressure or stress. It processes the pressure according to each individual's design and what else is colored in. And ideally, it doesn't pressure other people. It understands that some people handle stress differently than they do, and it does not expect others to handle the load like they do. So undefined, when it's healthy, it allows pressure to flow through without acting on it. It's not hurried or pressured to make a decision. Like, it's like, oh, it's urgent, I got to know right now. And it's like, right? You're aware of that. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm feeling stressed out. This is not the time. Can I call you back? Or is there a better time for us to talk about this? It uses the pressure energy to their advantage. And we talked about that, like using timelines, or when things are due, assignments or projects, or somebody's coming over at 3:00. Oh, it's 2:30. I better get ready. And using that half an hour to maybe tidy up or do whatever you need to do to prepare for the person that's coming to your office or your home.
I feel like I do all that, even though I define root. So I'm curious on like the inconsistency there.
Well, but you already know, you could handle it.
Oh, right. Okay.
There's an awareness. You didn't have to teach yourself.
No.
I had to teach myself.
Okay, got it.
My root is open. So it's
sense.
A more natural and healthy state. Okay.
Got it.
I love your questions. Okay, so then the second center that is a motor center is the willpower, or that little tiny diamond, the heart center. And there's the thymus gland, the gallbladder, the heart muscle, and even the stomach is engaged here in this tiny little center. It's tiny, but it's very powerful. And so if you have an undefined center, which is about 65% of the people on the planet. I don't know where the number is in one of these slides, but I think
it might be on the next one.
For people to know, if you're if you have challenges with the willpower, ego, heart center, you are not alone. It's a very challenging center for people. And we're going to talk about a little bit more about that as we go through these few slides. So what happens is we live in a culture that is very ego driven, very willpower. You got to be brave, you know, all of that, you know, competing. As children, you know, the spelling bee, you know, the races, you know, out on the playground, everything was like, who's going to win? You're competing. And so we got conditioned at a very early age that being competitive was a good thing. And it is for people that have the stamina to do that. But if you're undefined, you do not have consistent willpower. So you might be asking yourself, are you still trying to prove yourself? You know, to others, or that you have a great willpower or, you know, courage and control, and hey, I'll get that to you in 2 hours, you know, and then you go to work on it. And it's like, why did I say that? I don't have the energy to do that. So just asking yourself, or notice when these stir up inside of you, are you still trying to prove yourself? Am I trying, are you still trying to prove yourself? Am I trying to prove to myself? Do I think I have something to prove? Am I smart enough? Am I sexy enough? You know, do I have enough degrees? Do I overcompensate by making promises? And do I value myself? So self-worth and the tendency to overpromise sits here, and you really want to be aware of that. And hey, we all make mistakes or in judgment. So if you've overpromised, as soon as you realize it, you pick up the phone, the email, the text. Hey, I know I said I would, but I realized this is more reasonable time frame for me. Okay. So Nicole and I both have a defined ego. And so, you know, it's like we don't have as much to say about an undefined ego other than we notice it. Okay, so there it is, 65% of the population, undefined. In the not self strategy, not able to see your worthiness consistently. You feel deeply worthless and make promises to prove you're worthy, good, trustworthy, better, smarter, attractive enough, like really trying to overcompensate. Not self-decisions that come because of an open ego. Is, am I going to take this class or something else, whatever it is, to prove myself, to prove I'm smart? I'm going to have to compete to complete, you know, a makeover to show I'm attractive to my potential mate. Just really just notice when you're just trying too hard, because it can bring exhaustion. The true self is I'm going to do my best, but I can't promise. I have nothing to prove. That statement right there, I've shared with so many people in private sessions, and they've come back to me later. And it's like, when you said that, I have nothing to prove. It's just like, it just, the rewiring begins. And I see things clearly when feeling worthy. And we're, you know, really cultivating that for yourself. So the wisdom is, can you see what worthy is? Are you able to see self-worth in others? Can make a good assessment of other people's egos, recognizing who can make and keep promises. It's like, if you're working in a team and you know who's got a defined ego, it's like, hey, I'm aligning with them, but I'm going to let them go first. They have the ego power to do that. And how that has an effect on defined on undefined is others feel worthless or competitive. Humility is good for defined ego beings. I want to clarify that. Do you understand what is that really saying? It's the effect of a defined ego on an undefined person. So the effects that Nicole and I could have on someone is what it's saying that isn't defined. Is that they may feel worthless or competitive towards us. And for defined egos is that we have humility about our ability, that we have ego power and able to make promises that we can keep. So if someone, okay, so I won't get off track. Let's go to the next one. Do you have any comments here?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say that you brought the one word up that stuck to me, which was the promise part, because that's sort of when you realize you want to do your best, but you can't keep a promise, right? So it's like, you don't have to spin into a negative spiral of feeling like, now I'm definitely not worth it. Not only could I not keep the promise. So it's just understanding that when you are, learning to trust yourself in whatever part of your experiment is, it's like really keying into that strategy that we talked about in the beginning, right? Of like, what promises are you making, and going to that strategy if you know that you have an undefined center, right? So is that what you're saying? So if you're undefined here, your strategy is key to knowing where your promises need to be, like fully evaluated and checked in with yourself before, so that you're not having to go back on a promise. And then even if you do, it's not that negative spiral after the fact. You just move on.
Absolutely. And another way, if you're working with people, say, you're a copywriter, or something on a website, or whatever services that you have, and people say, well, we really want that by Tuesday. And it's like, well, just because somebody doesn't want something doesn't mean they get it. You say, I'll do my best to get it to you by Tuesday. When it gets a little closer, I'll let you know how it's coming along, or something like that. Just being aware of that you have a tendency to overpromise, so that you feel worthy, so that people will like you and trust you. It's just that awareness. It's not the spiral of taking it into feeling bad about yourself. You don't have to do that anymore. You can just let that go.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, so this is on the line for even the defined people. So, pumping up an ego and expecting everyone around you to like them. Or sometimes defined egos put pressure on others to prove themselves. And, it's like, what? You can't keep up? The Nike model, just do it. Like, what? You can't do that? Right. Or just being forceful. So very aware of that. If you have a defined ego, I don't think anybody listening to this will succumb to that, but it's just good to know you can see it in your world that people do this, really pump themselves up. Undefined ego. Okay, those feelings of, self-esteem and worth, difficulty in recognizing their own value, or asking appropriate pricing for their achievements. I'll come back to that. Unable to keep promises, or overcompensates. So the other thing, we talk about self-worth. Worth is also value, which is also, our money system. A lot of times people with an undefined center don't know how to charge for their prices, or they undercharge, or they give too much away. So, be aware of that. And if that's something that you need help with, you can bring that to their coaching sessions. Yeah. And when it's healthy. So a healthy defined ego, consistent access to their willpower, a natural sense of self-esteem and self-worth, a fixed way of dealing with the material plane in terms of, again, just the money part that we were talking about, in bargains and promises. And I'll add here is that if a defined ego person tells you they're going to do something, they'll do it. It's like, it's done. It's a done deal. Healthy, undefined, content with their worth. I have nothing to prove. Remember that statement. I have nothing to prove. My value comes from other things, and human design explains that for you. So you know where your strengths are. Able to work with people without making promises. So I gave you some examples of that. It's just how you articulate that. It's not about being flaky. You don't have a permission to be flaky. If you have a defined ego center, you have a responsibility to take care of yourself and communicate in a way that is bridging and takes care of you and keeps the other people informed. Becomes involved in their work, so they know through your strategy and inner authority what's the right things to engage in. Do you have the energy for whatever it is that you're going to embark on? Any final words on the ego center? Okay, no. We're moving on. So the next motor is the emotional center. So this is the one that sits over to the far right, right? The emotional center, the nervous systems, our passion, not always so practical, can be irrational, and potential emotional intelligence. The kidneys and the pancreas, biological, this is what's correlated with that center. So whether it's defined or undefined, so let me just pause here in case this question comes up. It just dawned on me. So the biological correspondence with any of these centers, doesn't matter whether you have it colored in or not colored in. Yes, it's still there. Yes, you're a human being. It's still functioning. And it just functions possibly. It has more sensitivity if it's undefined. It has more consistent and more oomph if it's colored in. So yes, we all have kidneys and a pancreas.
We hope. Okay.
Undefined. So some questions to ask yourself. So there's a sensitivity that comes with the emotional center. And, people can be in a really high emotional state or a low emotional state or anywhere in between. And when you're undefined, you're assessing that. You have a sensitivity to it. So are you avoiding confrontation and truth? Are you avoiding telling someone that might get upset? Am I being too touchy and nervous here? Am I emotionally nervous? Am I afraid and hiding from the consequences of upsetting someone? So, telling your boss or your lover or your kid or your mother or your sister something that is going to be sensitive, not something you want to walk into. But there's strategies for doing that.
And I will say, when we touch on this in the Brilliant Brain training, we talk a lot about communication. And so the avoiding confrontation and truth, it could be part of that, could be because of your undefined center, but it could also be because of the conditioning that having confrontation or speaking up created a negative reaction from a parent or a caretaker when you were a child. So sometimes, especially, I would say maybe if that means if you have an undefined root, that is the conditioning, that confrontation and truth is something you have to avoid to maintain your safety. And so, I don't know how that plays into the defined root, but I know that the undefined, that there's a lot of conditioning that comes from the imprinting years of your life, the first 7 years of not wanting to rock the boat or cause problems. So it could be especially something for somebody to be aware of if they both have the conditioning and the undefined center, right? That it's like, that's really something that would be, the awareness of it is game changing. So.
Yeah, and the awareness of it is the first piece. It can, and I think you meant the emotional center.
Oh, sorry.
But also the root. Any of these motor centers, if you're open, these are the power centers. And if they're open, and or you've got a kid or whatever, it's like as a child, you are taking all of that in, and you don't have the maturity to discern it. So this is, one of the reasons why Nicole and I are marrying these two learnings and tracks, is that there's more than one way to approach the emotional sensitivity that you have. So we're 50-50. Half of everybody in the world has got it colored in and half of us do not. So those that do not, that have it undefined, the strategy, the not self strategy, or the unaligned strategy, that's more our term. Avoid confrontation and truth to avoid the pain. So you see the world, you may possibly see the world as unsafe, and or pretending to be nice. Fine, I'm fine, everything's fine. Yep, not rocking the boat here. Not unaligned decisions. I just won't mention it because they might get upset. I'm just, I'm just going to keep that inside. I'm going to keep that secret. People that have an undefined emotional center have a secret life, that which they share with others, and that's what they keep inside. And, that works for so long, and then it becomes unhealthy. True self, it's important enough to tell the other person how I really feel and allow their emotional wave to be whatever it is and not take it personally. Whew. There's one of your keys right there. The wisdom can see what needs to be confronted, is sensitive to the emotions of others, and effects of a defined and undefined is your emotional waves are taken in and amplified by others. They feel worse or better than you do.
Yeah, and I would say that on the wisdom, the sensitive to the emotion of others and responsible of the emotion of others is two totally separate things. And so you can be aware and even compassionate, but you don't have to take ownership or feel like it's your job to fix it or whatever. So sensitivity doesn't mean the problem becoming the problem solver just because you're sensitive to someone's emotions. So that's one of those things that
yeah, there's a lot there.
You don't have to fix it.
I'm sure there's going to be questions around this center. So yeah, we'll be addressing it through the course. Okay, unaligned, unhealthy. The defined emotional makes impulsive decisions and puts emotional pressures on others. This is just pure immaturity. They're upset about something, so everybody needs to get upset about it. Sends emotional chaos into the environment. Undefined people, like we said, avoiding the truth and confrontation, being nice, the secret life to protect themselves from, the backlash, somebody getting upset, and touchy and nervous. So if you see touchy, nervous children, it could be what's you can start getting to this with your kids at a much younger age, and helping them learn some tools to deal with their sensitivity around emotions. Okay, so when we're in what's healthy and natural is defined people, they're comfortable riding their wave for clarity. I'm just going to say something about that. So when someone is defined, their emotionality is strong, and say they get news about their neighbor or their cat or their neighbor's cat or whatever, something that's upsetting. It's like there's this wave of emotion that comes up, and so it has to, as I mentioned earlier, it's like someone can be in a really great, wonderful mood. Oh, you look so fantastic in that outfit, that kind of thing. Or they can be like down in the dumps. Oh my gosh, my cat got hurt, or I got to take my cat to the vet, whatever it is. But there's an in-between place. And so when you're defined, that, if you're high or if you're low, that at some point, if you just write it out a day or two, maybe take longer, depending on what it is that is upsetting you, that there is this point of clarity. We talked a lot about this in the inner authority. When your inner authority is the emotional center. So you might want to go back and review that. Okay, define, they have depth and perspective, emotional wisdom that it's gained through waiting to make decisions, feeling your feelings. So anyone that's defined emotionally, that is your inner authority, just as a reminder. So those that are undefined, the other 50%, undefined emotionally, what's healthy for you is that you're emotionally quiet, right? It's like on your own, you're cool, maybe even a little bit aloof, empathetic, can really feel what other people are feeling and maybe even help them sort it out without taking it on. Moves in and out of others' emotional wave without identifying with them, and confronts with their truth when it's necessary to do that, you know, and you can always do it through an email or, you know, I need to talk to you tomorrow. One tip here, if you know someone that you're going to talk to that typically gets upset, or that they're going to, or that they are already upset by something you said or did or what happened, I would always wait a day or two before I would go back and talk to them. I had a business partner, and you know, I would just know, okay, she needs a day or two to just kind of settle that out. So the you know, using the concept of timing. Okay. All right, so the last motor, and this is the most powerful motor of the 9, it's vital energy, respondability, availability, it's sexuality and fertility. So in biologically, it's the ovaries or the testicles, and this is the second center up from the bottom. If you have this undefined, questions you might ask yourself is, are you the last one to realize when enough is enough? Now, knowing when enough is enough, you know, do I know when enough is enough? Do I stop when I need rest? Do I honor the inconsistencies of my energy? Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the unaligned strategies, they just don't know. They don't know when they've had enough of whatever it is, work or play or sex. Just, you know, just keep on going. The unaligned decisions they might make is, I'll keep cleaning the garage even though everyone else is relaxing or has gone to dinner. That's a little extreme, but the true self is, I'm going to stop. I'm tired. I really need to admit to myself my energy has dropped, or I'm starting to feel fatigued. I have a sense when enough is enough. And this is a daily practice, hourly sometimes practice, because it's not natural to you. And the wisdom, if it's undefined, is know when enough is enough and can guide others to use their energy efficiently. Right? Like, hey, why don't you guys come back over tomorrow and let's finish this project tomorrow when you've had a chance to rest and replenish. And how a defined sacral affects an undefined is, there can be some pressure. Again, it's a motor that runs 24/7. So it's pressure for them to keep on keeping on, and pressure that they don't stop when they get tired. Now that can be conscious or unconscious that happens. Okay, so the unaligned state, a defined sacral initiates rather than responds. Remember those generators? Initiate, you know, the thing is to respond to life. Does not enjoy the work that they do. Oh my gosh, there's nothing worse for a sacral to be doing something it doesn't want to do, something it doesn't have passion for. Depletes its sacral energy and feels tired and gets stuck and quits, or it's filled with frustration. And that can come from a lot of different things. It can come from, I should do that, or someone else told you you should go do something and you're doing it and you don't have any energy for it. And there's other things that can have your sacral or your whole being filled with frustration. An undefined sacral, unaligned, it works to the point of exhaustion, and then other things can happen from that. Too much sex, things can happen from that. Unable to pull away from, you know, when they get around sacral people and they feel all that juiciness, they don't know when to like separate and take some rest. Believes they're ill when they don't have enough energy, so really concerned about their health. Or they can be overzealous, you know, trying to be too bubbly when it's really not authentic for them. So let's look at it when it's in a healthy state. Okay, so define sacral. 70% of the people watching this is you. It enjoys being busy, doing what they love. You have to, your work is so important for generators and manifesting generators. What you choose, you have to have love for it. Responds with a sacral voice, and the voice may be silent. It may just be a lift. We talked about that when we addressed the generators and the manifesting generators. Uses healthy ways to work off their sacral energy. I got to get up and take a walk. I know that about myself. Even if I just go to the backyard, I just got to move.
A little dancing.
Yes. Is patient and at peace with waiting. There's a big one. Is happy and satisfied with the work that they do. Okay, undefined people, relaxed. They also are doing what they love. And at a pace that works for them. I want to add that. Observes or studies the mysteries of life. Manages their inconsistent energy through their strategy and authority. So again, what is it that your strategy is? Are you here to impact others or guide others? Works more as a specialist for short periods of time and usually guiding others in their work. Knows when to remove themselves from the sacral energy. So as children, people growing up, undefined, and most people, if you live with someone else, that if you're undefined and you have other people in the household, you're around sacral energy. If you're a health practitioner and you've got people coming to you and you don't have a defined center, people that are coming to you do. So you pick that up and you want to be aware, like, okay, I've picked up some sacral energy. I still need to take my nap, or I still need to take a break and be in my own energy field just to kind of shake it out.
All right. I think, is that the end of for this section?
Yes,
Yeah.
So pick one of these centers and focus on, notice, look at your own chart, maybe look at some of the other people in your life, your clients, whatever, your sister, look at charts and see, just look at these 4 centers. And it tells you so much about yourself or about another person. And you can understand why you aren't compatible, or maybe why you don't get along so well, like what is in the way. And once you can understand that, you can bring more harmony to opposites.
So good. And I think one of the things I loved the most about understanding this is that whole, like, knowing that you have a certain amount of energy if you are undefined, and the people who are defined can have a lot of energy when you're talking about the sacral or the sacral. And the peace that comes over when you're like, oh, actually, yeah, I'm not ill. Like, I don't need to go get blood work done, which maybe you do. I'm not saying somebody doesn't, but for me, I kept thinking something is wrong with me because I just can't keep up with my husband, right? Like, he sleeps half the amount of time as I do and has way more energy. And I'm like, I don't know how you do it, but I need to nap it too. So I think there was a lot of peace that came from that understanding too. So lots of information here. And like, use your worksheets, go through the information, don't overwhelm yourself, take your time, and we'll see you in the next module.